Welcome back to the Indiewood Podcast, a podcast about indie filmmaking and the many hats we wear in order to get those films made. This is our final episode with our wonderfully talented screenwriter, novelist, podcaster, writer. Good friend. Yeah. Family at this point.
Great.
And one-time director, Julia Batavia.
I love how you're just going to keep saying one-time director.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was a very...
one-off. Yeah.
One-off. But it was important, I think, for... And I think everybody should direct a film that they wrote because it...
Even if it's on an iPhone.
Yeah. It shows you what the film could look like.
Yeah.
Seeing your words spoken and going through the act of crafting something that you've written into a physical film is also just daunting and a challenge and educational and can do so much for your craft, you know, because then you can hear and you're like, oh, I wrote that. Ooh.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I wrote that. Oh my God. You know?
Yeah.
It's good. So welcome back to another episode. We talked a lot about careers and craft and just stepping out of your boundary as a writer. And the one thing that I think always inspires me about your career, your journey, everything you've done is how much you've been your engine, how much you've received because of the things that you've done. You've been your own go-getter, your own support, your own manager. I feel like if you told me like, oh yeah, all the rep that I had, that was just me, I would be like, yeah, that tracks. But it wasn't. It was. There were actual amazing reps, and you've been repped. You know, you had agents and managers and...
Let's put it this way. You can't wait for a car to pull up, open the door and say, get in. Yeah. You have to be the car. Mm-hmm. You have to be the engine.
You have to be Lightning McQueen.
Yeah, sure.
It's a Cars reference.
Yeah, no, I get it.
So I think both you and I share a common trajectory where we got a lot of success after grad school. We got hired to do work. We've done things. We've made a career on some level from writing. But then the last couple of years have been really tough.
Yeah.
And so I think I wanted to have a conversation about what to do when things get tough.
Notwithstanding a pandemic as well.
Yeah. Forget the pandemic.
Yeah.
You know?
That's like that's like that goes without saying.
Yeah. And so for me, having succeeded at right out of grad school, gotten rep, something was landed at a production company that was, you know, going well, and then the pandemic happened, the project stalled, my rep and I split, and then the project was like, hey, we can't do anything with it because the company was also restructuring because they didn't know how to survive. And so coming back to this, you know, career that I have and me having a journey of not recovering, but just dealing with, you know, the loss.
It's called persevering.
Yeah, that's a good, persevering in my career. I wanted to talk about your journey as well because you've had also perseverance.
You have to.
Yeah, and I there's something interesting you said when we were doing the prep of this episode for this series was it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No, but I also think anyone who's listening to this podcast knows that.
True.
I'm just going to talk about it.
So we'll talk about a lot of stuff that's a bummer, but we're going to end it on hope.
What I want to talk about is the sobering kind of reality in that a lot of times you listen to people and it's all optimistic and it's all great and I persevered and look what I did and it's still going. And it's like there are periods where that motivation is not there. The hustle fails. Your drive is depleted.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It doesn't make you any less of an artist. It doesn't make you any less of a writer. I think acknowledging and embracing, which I've gotten to get better at, is essential. Because then if you don't, you're constantly in a state of I could do more. Why aren't I doing more? Yeah. I think the umbrella here is I've been on a journey with different representation and management. At times I have felt like I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go. I was with then I was with then I was with then I was with and currently I am not with anybody.
Same. Mm-hmm.
And there's a fallacy that an agent or a manager will you're set, you're secure. And people who've had and have lost understand that that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think, oh, if only I can get a manager, then I'll be good. And coming from the other side, I got there. And yes, I was put up for projects that I would not have otherwise been put up for, that I didn't get, but still was able to pitch on. But anything really came from a still self-generative state. And you're sort of like, now you just have people to go, look at my stuff. Isn't it neat? Like, you know, look at me. These are my gizmos and gadgets, my who's its and what's its.
Look at my stuff.
Yeah. And so that's the privilege of having management and an agency, but also can be a trap because you can become complacent. You can start to expect that they will do things for you. And that's simply not the case, or at least in my experience, being still a sort of starting out writer, not someone who has the name cachet that can just get a meeting based on.
Like Eric Roth, where, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, even people who have been staffed on like multiple TV shows that are just players.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't put myself in that category, even having been at big places. It can go away.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it does. And then you're left having to think about, well, who am I without this external validation? Who am I when I don't have this sort of cadre of name brands as identifiers for my art? And that can be difficult. You have to go back to, in a way it's freeing, because then all of a sudden you're not worried about what other people think anymore, because you have no one to be accountable to.
Yeah.
You have to be accountable to yourself again and start again from perhaps now a more enlightened place of what really matters. What do I want to write if I'm not worried about what some agent is going to think? And by the way, the script that won UCLA Showcase, the one that we both did so well in, was a script that a manager at the time advised me not to write.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll just do it anyway. And look what happened.
Yeah.
So there's a lot about intuition as well, which I don't think we've touched a lot about my woo-woo-ness of divine intervention and timing and all of that. But intuition, hand in hand with passion.
You've always had a good sense of like, I want to do this. Well, you know what? I think it's passion. I don't think it's anything but, because you have been told, don't do this thing, it's not going to sell. And you're like, I want to do it.
Yes.
And you did, and it does well. And I think it does well mostly because of your passion for it.
No one would advise you to write a script about Peter O'Toole's ex-wife, a painter from the 1880s. Like, those were the first two passion projects no one would have told me to do. But because I cared so much about them, I wanted to make them universal. And we see films like this get made. Turner, like, we see The Theory of Everything. I mean, there was a period where like this...
There's a biopic, the decade of biopics.
It's truly. And there's so many more I could...
Ray.
Quote. Oh my God, they're endless. Yeah.
Well, there's this idea of you, not you, but the general you, like going through a process of gaining things for your career, but then losing things for your career. Well, there's also an instance where you have to walk away from things.
Yeah.
And you've had that experience.
You have to walk away when you feel like you've turned every stone you could. I mean, there's this, don't give up is a double-edged sword, because that insinuates that you can't choose to walk away because you've changed your mind. I could have continued down this path with certain people at big companies because the cachet, should have been enough.
Mm-hmm.
But me in my capacity at that time, I couldn't do it. I walked away from a creative partnership, which I haven't talked about really at all. But that was another thing. 2022 was a year of things that fell away.
Yeah.
Management, agency, creative partnership.
Mm-hmm. And not just fell away, but like you stepped away as well.
Sure. Stepped away is more agency.
Yeah.
It's more proactive.
Yeah. Fall away feels like you have no control over it, but maybe like you distanced yourself away. I don't know. There's a word for it, but I think people will understand. Yeah. But you mentioned something interesting because when we were doing the prep for this episode specifically, that you were working on this project, you were putting so much energy into it, and you were working on spec for free, and your decision to walk away, in part, not the whole reason, because there was also a lot of other factors at play that I'll let you kind of talk about. But you had this experience where you were meeting with these stakeholders and executives who were talking about big purchases they were making for the company and for their lives, and yet you were working on spec and had worked on spec for so long. And it's at that point less of a issue of the finances and more of an issue of like the principle,
Respect.
like the respect.
Look, everyone has a straw that breaks the back, and that was mine. I just couldn't do it anymore because I had been paid to write things, and yes,
and for that project you weren't.
No, I wasn't, and this was a passion project, and I think getting out of the mindset of you should be so grateful. You're in the room with these people. You should be so grateful just to grovel and write for free. Sometimes, yes, that's a very strategic decision. Sometimes you are fully being taken advantage of, and it does not matter how cool these people are. You have to do what's right for you.
Yeah.
I did what was right for me at the time. Do I still think about it sometimes? And I'm like, oh, could I have persevered a little bit more? Maybe, but
there's no guarantee that things could have been different.
No, and I had no gas in the tank.
Yeah. Creatively or spiritually. Yeah.
So there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, for folks listening, it's if you are in a position where you feel like you're being taken advantage of, and maybe that there's an opportunity for you to stick it out and maybe something will happen in the end, there you can make the choice to walk away from something, because as a creative you can only do so much. You can only kill yourself so much for the art before you're actually dead.
And you have to really reconcile what it is you're sacrificing, what it is you're willing to bet on, because some of these things are just like necessary to do, putting in the time for free. I totally get it. I've done it. I continue to do it. And some things, you can step away from, and it doesn't mean you didn't try hard enough. And it doesn't mean the project didn't mean anything to you. It just means that the timing is wrong.
Because there's always, and we'll come back to this, I think this is the theme of the entire series, there's always a time for something. A project will find its footing in time.
It will.
It's meant to be.
Or it won't. I mean, that's also it's part of the package deal of this industry. Some projects just will not happen. Like
with Jodorowsky's Dune.
Sure.
And people talk about it.
On every effing level. There was a point I had been trying to push this project through for 5 years, and they wanted to just keep doing XYZ. And I said, maybe we should just let it go. And I never heard from them again. There was no fighting me for it. There was no, Julia, you should. It was
silence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The eternal ghost. Yeah.
I mean, but that's that's part of it. Like, and so I think the key is trying to fall in love as much as possible with new projects, because that's, I think, really how I viewed and how I've had the energy to continue is like, it's love. It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing.
And there are many projects you've done, because you've done the Peter O'Toole script, the Sargent script, and then you wrote a script about Marlon Brando, and those 3 scripts all found life in some capacity, and then maybe just didn't work out, or you left them where they are. And just because those scripts were written but haven't gone anywhere yet doesn't ever mean that that was a waste of time.
No. And for what it's worth, one of them has since like come back from the dead.
Yeah.
And
well, we'll touch on that in a little bit. We'll have the audience guess which one it is. We won't tell them. But
is it what's behind door number 1? What's behind door number 2?
But the interesting thing is about having a career without rep, without like industry support, and I'm using my fingers in air quotes, quote unquote industry support, is that sometimes you then become your own advocate. And I think this is something you've done for your entire career. For me, after parting with my rep, after kind of, finding myself alone, after all the support, I was like, what do I do? And then I just didn't write for a while, and I picked myself up, wrote some stuff, sent it out into the universe through just a bunch of avenues to people I've met before, through cold emails.
Yeah, cold
emails. And then I also threw it up on the blacklist for like $130. And then through that, I got meetings. People wanted to talk. And then I still maintain those friendships. And I'm working with a company right now to make a feature, that's its own thing, independent, not independent. Like
which just goes to prove that you are your own instigator. You are your own engine, regardless of if you have fancy titles and fancy labels and attachments.
Sometimes your name has more weight. That's all it is.
Sometimes your passion has more weight.
True. Yeah.
I think passion is the key word here. In this series, because it propels all motion. And sometimes you have to step back and take time off.
Yeah. You said something interesting in prep. You were like, you're not that special. Not me, but the general you.
Hate to break it to you.
Yeah. But you know what? I feel like I disagree with that.
Okay.
Because we can look at both of our careers and be like, we're not that special. We're trying. But I think what makes us special is the passion we bring for not the craft, but the stories.
Here's what I mean when I say you're not that special. To a stranger, you are not that special.
Yeah.
It's only when you are able to show your passion and really communicate what you want to do and who you are that they are able to start to understand you are a special person. Because everyone's a cynic. Nobody has time. That's why when you're pitching yourself, your project, no one's special. But it's like an onion. Peel the onion.
Yeah.
Shrek.
Yeah.
You're special. You are. It just there's a hurdle in this industry to make people notice, and unfortunately, I think that's more common than not.
Yeah. And there's also a lot of writers, a lot of creatives, a lot of artists that have to break through that initial barricade of you're not special.
Yeah, it's more easy to not care than it is to invest time and energy. So that is the guard that most people have up. They're going to dismiss you as nothing special. But your goal is to prove them wrong. I think that's been my mission with whatever I've done, prove the cynical, objective reader, viewer wrong, that they will care, that they will connect to what I'm trying to do. and what I believe in.
Yeah. We talked a lot about things we've left behind, and there are scripts in my past that I have left behind just because the timing wasn't right, or maybe these things will never get made because there's a script that I wrote that's got to be like $100 million because it's a big epic, you know?
Right.
And I'm like, is anybody going to make that now? Maybe.
But you know what? The fact that you wrote it, the fact that you got that out of your head and onto the page, that's the win.
Yeah.
If we want to really distill it and take it down to the tangible.
It's alive on the page.
Yeah. And who the hell knows? Truly, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But then you have to be practical. Then you have to be proactive in that. All right, so I've done this thing. It's $100 million. What am I going to make first?
Yeah.
That is $100, $10,000. And then you build up.
And that's kind of my superpower as a multi-hyphenate right now, working as a writer, you know, pitching these things, working with production companies on rewrites and, you know, original stories, but also having the opportunity to do my own shorts, to, you know, do my own micro budget features.
Right.
That's something we can do, you know, and I think now we have more opportunities now that the streaming services are scrambling for a new normal, and indie films are like, well, we'll just go back to making indie films.
Thank God.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. About time.
Yeah.
And so thinking about these projects we've left behind that don't really die, they're there, they're alive, and sometimes people find them. And I think for you recently, this has been the story where one of those three men that we've talked about that you've written about, and they're the women that support them.
And the women that support them, bigger.
Someone found the script in the wild. You put it out there and someone read it, someone that has a stake in the industry, someone that's a creative, and they reached out to you.
Yeah. Out of the blue. But then if you're going to ascribe to divine timing and, you know, coincidence and all of that, maybe it's because I made space in my life
Maybe.
for something like that to come back.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of clutter. There was a lot of indecision. There's a lot of doing things for the wrong reasons. Maybe that only came about because of that. I don't know.
That's a little woo-woo.
It's a little woo-woo.
And I still like it, though. You're totally right, because there's been moments in my life where I've asked the universe for something, and then 6 months later, I was like, here you go.
Look, I'll reground this. So what I'm trying to say is, if things aren't working, push them aside so you have space mentally and physically,
And
spiritually, for other things to come through. Because if you're solely focused on this one idea, and I've seen it, people who are like for 10 years have been trying to do this one script, and it's like, well, have you thought about writing something else? No, this is the thing. This is the thing. You're really limiting yourself.
Yeah.
And it's to your detriment that you don't venture off and try something new.
That's why I think in grad school, when all the new folks came in, they were like, anything you've written, anything you're thinking about writing, put it in a box. New. For these next 2 years, new ideas only.
Yeah.
And some people didn't, like, I didn't do that, you didn't do that. Yeah, we were just like, let's do it anyways.
Well, to be fair, I came in with the idea, but I hadn't written pages.
Yeah. Well, okay, I'll give you that. It's a gray area. Yeah.
It was an idea that I was like, oh, now I have a structure in which to flesh it out. That's what I will do.
Yeah. Well, now having you be open to the universe, to new things, this project came back, and you've met with the director, you've met with talent, you've met with the producer, and things are moving forward.
Let's say cautiously optimistic. You know, maybe next year I'll have more to talk about in greater detail.
We'll have you back on in a year and be like, how did things go?
Yeah.
Which of the three men did succeeded? Yeah.
I think the bottom line is stay open.
Yeah.
Who knows? Lightning could strike. To quote Meet Joe Black.
What? Anthony Hopkins.
Great movie.
Yeah. It's like, what's that phrase? Luck is opportunity meets preparation. Is that it?
Yeah, that's Bob Evans.
Yeah. So you've prepared extensively, and you're open to the opportunity. So we could call that luck, but I think it would be divine intervention.
I think that anyone is capable of having things like this happen, and they do happen all the time. It's just about trying to put yourself in positions to meet new people, trying to remain inspired by exploring different mediums, watching documentaries, going to museums.
Yeah.
I mean, even scrolling on your phone. It doesn't matter as long as you're trying to figure something out.
Yeah.
Like,
do the artist's way.
Yeah. It's been on my list for like
Yeah.
5 years now.
I'm on week 2, and it's tough, but it's going well so far.
No, I mean Julia Cameron's she's no joke. Another quote that I love that I wanted to share.
We'll have a quote off to end this episode
Broadcast. It's about Susan Sontag, and she said, "Don't worry about being obsessive." She loves obsessive people. Obsessive people make great art, and I think I've had to be obsessive. It's part of my personality. You have to be obsessive in your goal to see something through to completion, to see a project through, to do the research, to reach out to the people. I'm not talking about like you baby reindeer shit. I'm talking about the obsession that propels you to create and want to share that creation.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. I mean, I wouldn't shut up about like these guys that I'd written about for years, and my friends were like, "Can you please talk about something else?" Yes, you're like a Trivial Pursuit like card deck of information about these guys, but I wanted to tell anybody who would listen.
And now one of them is, hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, going to be a movie.
We'll see, but that's sort of beside the point.
You're cautiously optimistic.
You're not going to get me excited on this podcast.
On that note, I think we'll end, and we'll leave everybody with notes and thoughts and advice on craft. Hopefully some folks will learn from your journey of perseverance and being your own engine, and maybe we'll see some
reach out to people.
Yeah. Reach out to you.
Email
Julia.
No, don't email me. Don't email me, but email people that you want to be seen by. And even if they don't answer, no answer doesn't mean
follow up with them in a month, in a 2.
Yeah, don't be
6 months.
weird.
Yeah, not every week, not every day.
Don't be
Don't be like, you haven't replied to my last email. Just
yeah,
like, hey,
be cool.
Up. Yeah.
Be cool.
Yeah. Be cool and charismatic. Don't be weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the tagline.
Be bold. Keep learning. I think that's also another thing. Keep learning. Never stop learning. Try
I
new
think
things.
neither of us are where we want to be, but then there is no place to be, because it's all an extension of learning.
Be bold. Keep learning. Keep writing. Julia, thank you for your time,
You're
for your
welcome.
advice, for your story, and we'll see you in a year.
Yeah. You got it. Sure.
Thank you for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us at the CFA studio for another series of the Ain't It Wood podcast. You can find the podcast wherever you find your podcasts, or on YouTube at the Cinematography for Actors YouTube channel. See you next week.
From the CFA network, Cinematography for Actors is bridging the gap through education and community building. Find out about us and listen to our other podcast at cinematographyforactors.com.
Cinematography for Actors Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit. For more information on fiscal sponsorship, donations, because we're tax exempt now, so it's a tax write-off, and upcoming education, you can email us at contact@cinematographyforactors.com. Thanks.